Frank Isola, the star of Around the Horn, Sirius XM NBA Radio, the starting lineup, Monday through Friday. And Frank, kind enough to join us here. Frank, can you help me understand what's going on with Spike Lee and the New York Knicks?
I want to know, and how are you, Dan, since you're a media guy, but you're also a celebrity VIP. Does Dan Patrick enter the Garden through the VIP entrance, or do you enter with the riffraff of the media and you go at 8 Penn Plaza? Which one is it?
Well, all those years I worked at CNN and I would go over, I went through the employee entrance a couple of times. But for the most...
with people like me, the riffraff, I've been on the elevator before with Spike. He's entered that way a million times, and I know you know Spike. And Spike, listen, when he's courtside, does he like being part of the show? Some people don't like it. Some people do. But when Spike is like kind of behind the scenes, so to speak, he doesn't walk around like he owns Madison Square Garden. And he's been coming in that way forever. First of all, what's the big deal? All right, but you have a new rule. But for the story to get to the point that it's at, and whether or not the Knicks are 100% right or Spike is 100% right, it's the Knicks that don't look good, because what the Knicks are trying to do is kind of market themselves to NBA players. So now they gave Charles Oakley a hard time, threw him out of the building, and now they're giving a hard time to the most famous fan entering the building. It makes no sense.
Frank, could you imagine the Cubs doing this to Bill Murray?
Yeah, or the Lakers with Jack Nicholson. You're 100% right. That's a great way of looking at it. What do you have to gain from doing something like that? And remember this too. There are times where they can give the media a hard time, which I get it. The team hasn't been good really for 20 years, and the coverage is, even though they don't want to admit this, the coverage is based on the results. So the results have been, for the most part, really bad for the last 20 years. So the relationship between the media and the team is not going to be that great, obviously. I mean, the relationship between the Warriors and their media the last 5 years has been pretty good because they went to the finals for 5 straight years. So a lot of times it comes down to the results. But regardless of the relationship between the media and the team, here's a guy that's paying money. He's a customer. It's like, I think he said like $300. $3,000 per ticket, and he's got 2 per game. It's a lot of money over the course of a year. Maybe like in his lifetime, since he's been a Knicks fan, he's maybe spent $10 million. He's basically paid for a power forward. I mean, it's a lot of money. I mean, what's the big in the grand scheme of things? It's not a big deal, but it is a big deal. Like why go through this on the night where Leon Rose takes over the team? You have your best win of the season against the Houston Rockets, and what becomes the big story? That the owner of the team and their most famous fan are getting into it. That's really what you want.
He actually pays for this poor product. Other people, right?
Yep.
He pays for this. And if he is an employee, Frank, he might be unofficial, but he's been the ambassador for the Knicks for almost 30 years. And so I don't know how it got to this point, but it just feels like it's a Knicks way of handling things. And that's why they're the worst run franchise and probably in all of sports.
And even when he went on the air yesterday to kind of, to explain himself and to complain about it, he was wearing Knicks stuff. He was wearing, a Knicks ski cap.
Yeah.
So he still kind of represents the Knicks everywhere he goes. And there's nothing to gain from it. And, for them to come out and say in the statement that it's laughable, why pick a fight with them? Why continue this thing? It doesn't make any sense. But it kind of gives you an indication of where the Knicks are right now. And a big thing for them, Dan, over last summer was they struck out with free agents, and just the perception that a lot of NBA players have about the Knicks, and it was really hurt by the Charles Oakley situation when they threw him out of the building. And again, let's say, for example, let's argue the Knicks side that they're 100% right in what they did. They still hurt themselves in the eyes of NBA players. You had LeBron James, the most powerful player in the league, came out and said something about it. Chris Paul, also the second most powerful player in the league, came out and said something about it. Why would you want that to be? Forget about how the media feels about you and whatever fans who sit in the upper deck. The idea is for you to go out and get players. That's not how you want to be perceived, but that's how they are perceived.
We're talking to Frank Isola, who covers the NBA and contributes to Around the Horn. A couple other things here. Tim Duncan takes over for Coach Popovich in San Antonio as Pop is out for personal reasons. Do you think Tim Duncan is the successor, the heir apparent to Greg Popovich in San Antonio?
Earlier this season, and it really floated under the radar, I believe it was against Portland, but there was a home game where Greg Popovich got kicked out. and it was pretty clear that either Tim Duncan or Will Hardy is the guy's name, who went to Williams College, which is the same college that the kid Duncan Robinson went to before he went to Michigan. It was also George Steinbrenner's college. Anyway, it was clear that they were kind of coaching the team, and I thought it was interesting that nobody really made the connection where was Becky Hammond going to be the next one.
Yeah.
But it does seem like maybe Tim Duncan, it's something that he wants to do. Clearly, he's an assistant coach, and I think he wants to be part of the NBA. I thought he handled himself really well because, Dan, they said that he wasn't going to speak, and after the game he spoke, and you can tell why his teammates loved him as a teammate because he comes across as self-deprecating. He credited the other coaches for what they did. He said, all I was doing was screaming nonsensical stuff. Like, that's Tim Duncan perfectly. And he looks great. He's lost from his playing days. Not that he was heavy, but he's clearly lost weight. He's got the cool hair working. What I said, though, what the league should have done, they should have had Joey Crawford show up as a referee. Remember Joey kicked him out of that game that one time when all Tim Duncan was saying something from the bench. It would be very – like if he – did coach a bunch of games, it would be interesting to see what his interaction would be like with the referees. But I'm still convinced the Spurs' next game is in New York. Greg Popovich loves coming to New York, hanging out at the restaurants, drinking wine. He probably decided just to come to New York a couple of days early because they don't play again until Friday in Brooklyn.
I don't know if this was a topic on Around the Horn, but I'm going to guess it was, with the LeBron versus Greek Freak MVP talk. Where do you stand on this?
Well, it's funny. Like LeBron, as opposed to Giannis, doesn't really have kind of the media machine behind him because Giannis doesn't really go out to, I don't know if the right word is to recruit or to cultivate other people in the media. If you talk to him, he's fine. But I think LeBron's an older player, so he has more relationships. But I do think that LeBron is smart because LeBron did not have a great game on Saturday night against Memphis. Now, the game wasn't on national TV. Nobody paid attention to it, and they lost the game. But, this game where a lot of eyeballs are on, he's going up against Zion. He has a great game. That same day, Giannis goes for 40. I think it was 41 and 20. So Giannis has had the better game. But a lot of people in the media, and listen, all of us that, once you start getting a little bit older, you kind of appreciate guys that are 35 years old that could still do it at the highest level. But that really shouldn't factor into the voting. It really should come down to who's having the better season. And let's remember this too. Who would you rather have as your second teammate, Chris Middleton or Anthony Davis? So he's got the better second teammate. And I also think the media votes for awards, and a lot of times we like to, we sometimes vote with a little sense of what's the better story. And I do think LeBron winning it would probably be the better story. But I do get a vote. And as of this moment, that doesn't mean it can't change. I would still vote Giannis as the MVP because what he's doing is incredible, and they have 52 wins, which is pretty remarkable.
Yeah, I think the story angle is pretty important here. And having voted on this before, when Karl Malone won, I voted for Jordan.
That's right.
And when Charles won, I voted for Jordan. The better story was Charles Barkley and the Suns. The better story was Karl Malone and the Utah Jazz. But you can't tell me that Jordan wasn't the most valuable player. LeBron is the most valuable player in the NBA and has been for probably 12 years. His value is true value for every single franchise in the NBA and what he's doing for his team. For a guy who doesn't want to be listed as a point guard, he's taken over that position and he's leading the league in assists. He's got 3 years of playoff basketball, 3 seasons added on to that 35-year-old body. I mean, I don't know what you factor in, but I got to factor in all of these things here. And Anthony Davis hasn't been healthy. There's no drama with the Lakers, and I don't know. I think that,
I understand what you're saying, but look at the numbers that Giannis is putting up. Giannis is so dominant that he's just over 30 minutes a night, and a lot of times he doesn't even have to play the fourth quarter because he's done so much damage. So the win total should have something to do with it. But again, his second best teammate is Chris Middleton, and I get it. Chris Middleton.
Yeah, but the Lakers are winning the West, Frank. The Bucks are winning the East.
Well, there are good teams in the East. I mean, Miami's a good team. Toronto's a good team. Philadelphia's a good team. There's still good teams there. Who's in the Western Conference? Denver's the second best team. They just lost last night at home to Golden State. The Clippers never have all their guys.
Well, when it's all said and done, when we get to the postseason will be tougher to go through the West and the East. I think we can agree on that, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, I guess it would be. If Memphis finishes 8th, that's a pretty easy first-round series. I would love to see Portland get it because if you're the Lakers, you go through the season with the best record in the West, and then you have to play Damian Lillard, C.J. McCollum, a team that was in the Western Conference Final.
Oh, no, we want the Pelicans. We want the Pelicans in at that 8th seed.
Well, so does the league, and if that does happen, they're going to have the executives from Turner and ESPN, and they're going to be
very
popping
happy
champagne at the league office.
Very happy. Right? Frank, keep the peace on Around the Horn and, of course, at Madison Square Garden. Play nice, all right?
You're the man, Dan.
Thank you, Frank. Frank Isola, ESPN's Around the Horn, Sirius XM NBA Radio, the starting lineup, Monday through Friday.